let's do it why we did it last night, you know, nice and orderly, so we don't talk over each other, because we had a court reporter, and she can only do so much. So if the question is answered, let him, question is asked, let him answer. And we did pretty good after we got started with that, so let's just do it. I'd say if you want to start, go ahead. Jim, catch up.
Thank you. Jim Griffin with the law firm of Shane Bank, 70 West Madison, Suite 5300, Chicago, Illinois 60602. Now, Mr. Schomer, my name, of course, is Jim Griffin. I'm the attorney for the applicant on this project. Let me ask you a few questions here. Mr. Hankard, you know, prepared the noise model report for this project, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You should say yes, so that they get
Yes.
it. And you've collaborated with Mr. Hankard on other projects, correct?
All right.
How many projects have you collaborated with Mr. Hankard on?
I think two, but I could be wrong.
Right. In your opinion, is Mr. Hankard a competent, qualified, professional acoustician?
Yes.
And would you agree he's highly qualified?
Yes.
And you agree that Mr. Hankard is knowledgeable about how to prepare a noise model study?
Yes.
Have you reviewed the noise modeling report prepared by Mr. Hankard in this application?
Yes.
And did you prepare your own noise modeling report or for this matter?
No.
Have you done your own modeling study concerning this wind energy project?
No.
Mr. Hankard testified that the project will operate in compliance with the IPCB regulations. You've not done any study that would confirm or deny that conclusion, correct?
Yes.
You have done a study?
No, I'm just agreeing with you. I'm not
Okay.
going to study.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, so you don't dispute any of the conclusions that Mr. Hankard makes in his report?
I have none that I'm yes, I do dispute the
Would you
conclusion.
pull the mic towards you just a little bit more? You're kind of far away from it.
I think that the fact that he predicts the prediction has to be done using the standards and not using the standards minus 2 dB. I disagree with that. I don't disagree that he measured that. I don't disagree with his predictions, but I disagree with his correction.
All right, and you understand, are you aware that McLean County has adopted the Illinois Pollution Control Board regulations as its standard for wind energy conversion systems?
Objection. First of all, it's only partially true. It's an incomplete question, and it's a legal question.
It's just a yes or no question. I think if he feels qualified to answer it, he can answer it.
you like Mr. Griffin to repeat the question for you?
Yeah.
Let me back up a little bit. Have you read the McLean County zoning ordinance as it pertains to wind energy conversion systems?
I have not.
So do you know what the standard is for noise for a wind energy conversion system in McLean County?
Are they called standards? But I'm not familiar with the number.
You spoke about suggesting that the maximum, the DBA for a wind farm should be approximately 39, is that correct?
39, I would even agree to 40.
Do you know whether any project in the state of Illinois meets that standard?
I don't know.
You also recommended a 3,000-foot residential setback, is that correct?
Correct.
Do you know whether any project operating in the state of Illinois meets that standard?
Do not know.
Do you know whether or not those standards that you opined upon, do you know whether or not those would prevent any wind energy project from being developed in the state of Illinois?
Can we break that down, that question?
Sure. Do you know whether or not the noise standard that you believe is appropriate, that 39 to 40 dB, do you know whether or not adopting such a standard in the state would prohibit all wind energy projects from being built in the future?
I don't know that at all.
Do you know whether it's possible to build a project in the state of Illinois with a 3,000-foot residential setback?
Objection asked and answered.
I think you did answer that, but I don't know. I mean,
I broke the question into the dB and then this is the setback question. I broke it in half. So
Mr. Griffin's first question was both, actually.
you can do it if you want. I mean, if you want to answer the question, go ahead. If you don't have to, if you don't want to.
I don't want to answer.
All right. Have you investigated any noise complaints in the state of Illinois by residents within the footprint of a project?
I can't remember. I've talked to people in different places, but I can't remember where.
Well, have you conducted any noise investigation concerning wind energy projects in the state of Illinois besides the California Ridge one that you testified to?
I think I've worked for some other groups. Did one for the wind company and some others for communities, but I can't tell you what communities.
Were these companies or communities in Illinois?
Some in Illinois, some elsewhere.
Which projects have you worked on in the state of Illinois?
I can't remember.
Are you aware whether or not there have been any noise complaints by residents that live within the White Oak project in McLean County?
Objection beyond the scope.
He hadn't testified anything at White Oak, I don't think, so I don't think he has to answer the question.
Well, he testified about discussing noise complaints with people and trying to identify the location of those and the scope.
He only testified to that on cross-examination. It was not brought out on direct. Certainly.
We're getting into the subject. I mean, I think it's his discretion if he wants to answer it. I mean,
Well, wouldn't the board want to know how many Illinois residents have complained about noise that he has knowledge of? He's advocating you change the standards. I mean, what's the basis for that?
I'm sorry, I didn't know. My mic stops at times, so. He's not advocating any change in standards. He's advocating what is for the health and safety of the public. And he didn't testify about any investigations in this. It's all been only on cross-examination brought out by Mr. Griffin. And maybe I should have objected earlier, but I was trying to give him some leeway here.
I think if you rephrase the question, you might get an answer. To say where he actually talked to people.
Yeah, I think that was a question. Did you have you actually talked to people that live within the White Oak project in McLean County about noise?
Same objection.
I don't know. If it's important to you, I think he testified that he's talked to different people. And where they are, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure he knows. That's what he told you.
Yeah, he's already testified he doesn't recall the communities. We can go through 100 communities. It's not going to change
So
that.
I don't know for sure that we're going to get the answer you want.
Yeah, I respect that, Mr. Chairman. It's just when, as you said, he said he's talked to many people. I'm trying to identify where those people are at and whether any of those are in McLean County or the state of Illinois.
His answer has already been, there were times he talked to people in Illinois now, and he doesn't recall what communities. I don't know how much more we can ask him to do. If he doesn't recall, he doesn't recall.
Would you just kind of answer that question, that we just kind of move on then? Because I think we're going to have to get this taken care of.
I have to say that I can forget a person's name inside of 10 minutes. And I've had students work for me where I didn't get their name right for months. So I'm not going to get the names right here.
I don't think he's asking for names, just in an area.
Well, he said White Oak. I wouldn't know where White Oak is or what it is.
So you answered the question, that's fine.
Mr. Schomer, I've got a list of wind energy projects that are in Illinois. If I handed that to you and asked you to identify whether you've spoken with people that have noise complaints about those projects, is that a question you can answer?
I don't think a list of names is going to help me.
This would be a list of projects. Would that help you?
No.
All right, so as you sit here right now, you can't recall discussing noise complaints with any Illinois resident about a wind energy project in Illinois.
Objection is the form. He's already answered. He recalls having conversations. He doesn't recall the specifics or the names of the projects.
We're getting into a slippery slope, I think. But I think he said that he had talked to people in Illinois, but doesn't remember where they were. I think that's the answer you're going to have to give. Is that true?
That's true.
So I think that's what we're going to go with.
You testified concerning Shirley, Wisconsin. How many people were involved in that study?
How many acousticians?
How many residents, excuse me, thank you for clarifying that.
It seemed to me we met with a group of 40 or 50 people.
And how many people were part of the study?
I think part of the study, we made measurements at the 3 houses that are listed in the report. There were 4 of us doing the measurements in the general program at Shirley. Is that what you?
That's sufficient. Now, what you did in Shirley, and I know there may be an objection to this, but you don't recall doing anything like that for any Illinois project, correct?
It seems to me in Oregon we dealt with 2 or 3 households, and that was 100% of the households there.
You're referring to the state of Oregon, not the city of Oregon, I assume.
Yeah, the state of Oregon.
Okay, so you recall doing studies in Oregon and Wisconsin, but you don't recall doing any in Illinois, correct?
Not like those, no. Well, Oregon was pretty much on the physical side.
You also testified about the proper place of measurement under the Illinois Pollution Control Board regulations, correct?
Correct.
And do you understand that there's a land use classification system that determines what the decibel levels are, allowable decibel levels?
It's a land use classification system, very detailed.
And, do you understand that a property can have more than one land use classification, correct?
I don't pretend to be a lawyer.
Right, so I take it you're not familiar with the Knox versus Turris Illinois Pollution Control Board decision, 2003 Westlaw 137447?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
And you're not familiar with the decisions in that case on measurement locations under the Illinois Pollution Control Board regulations?
Objection, he's already said he's not familiar with the case.
Next question.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience. Would anyone in the audience have questions for this witness?
Jim Pitzer, 29485 East 2100 North Road, Colfax 61728.
Could you spell your last name, Mr. Pitzer?
Pitzer. Doctor, you testified that there is, I think you used the term annoyance. There's an audible annoyance to these things that have sometimes physical effects on human beings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you think that that would also apply to wildlife? Do you think, since their senses are somewhat more acute than ours, that the audible levels and the other sensory things that would affect wildlife in an adverse way?
I've not studied wildlife. enough to,
It's gonna be on their scope too, we didn't talk about wildlife and any.
Well, you talked about adverse noise effects, and I just thought I'd ask the question.
Okay, you tried it.
All right, I tried. We're all about annoyance here.
My name is Theodora Philip Hartke, Hartke. Address is 117 South East Avenue, Ogden, Illinois, 61859. Forgive me if I have a couple repeat questions that have been already asked. Dr. Schober, as a clarification, did you testify in Livingston County for perhaps a 3,300 foot setback in your analysis of Invenergy's project layout, which was near Fairbury and Forest?
I seem to recall that.
Would you be willing to prepare a model or a study to predict which homes would be unprotected in this McLean County project proposed by Invenergy?
I don't do counter myself. I've always left that for groups that have people do that.
Okay. Would you prepare a similar report or analysis with the help of other experts, which would be similar to what you prepared for Livingston County when they were trying to establish setbacks in some of those townships?
I'm really trying to get retired.
In this county, do you think it would be appropriate to take Invenergy's current layout of wind turbines and then provide a report prepared by an acoustician based on the recommendations that you've made, which would show how many homes would be protected versus unprotected?
Are you talking about the distance again?
Distances or noise level, similar to what you did for the Livingston County hearings to establish setbacks for some of those townships.
I would be willing to have somebody qualified do this and maybe even a reviewer.
Okay, so you would that's good. Should Mike Hankard's noise analysis for this project, should his analysis be relied upon to keep residents safe from excess noise levels?
Not with the levels that are and distances chosen.
Okay. Do you know, earlier you testified about some kind of a soundproofing. Do you know of any successful soundproofing against wind turbine low frequency noise or infrasound? Any commercially available material, or have you ever heard of that being successful anywhere?
Not that I know of. I don't know that any that have been not successful either. I just don't really know that much about what's been done.
Okay. Earlier you mentioned 12-inch thick concrete walls. Would a 12-inch thick concrete wall home, would that have to have no windows? Or could you have 12-inch thick walls and have windows and still protect people from low frequency noise?
To a degree, you can do something with the windows.
Okay.
And with a 12-inch wall, you get double or triple windows. It has the potential for being not too large windows. It could work.
So 12-inch thick concrete walls with small windows might work.
2 or 3 sets of windows and an opening.
Okay, so 12-inch thick concrete walls with small windows with 2 or 3 windows set within that wall would help soundproof.
Well, it would get rid of more low frequencies. I don't know if that's necessary or not.
Okay. Forgive me if this is a repeat, but I want to phrase it a certain way. Is the IPCB standard adequate to protect citizens in this particular Invenergy McLean County wind turbine project?
I don't feel it's accurate for that purpose.
So you feel that the IPCB standard is improper for this
It's
project?
not proper for wind.
Okay.
We never talked about it in 1968.
Tonight, you said that the sound measurement microphone could be anywhere on the property. If a resident would not allow the microphone at or inside their home for the measurements, do you think that that resident was right or
We're getting out
wrong?
of the scope of what he's, you're asking a specific question that doesn't pertain.
But
It's to your case that you were talking about last night, so.
okay. Is it proper to have the noise microphone at the property line when measuring turbine noise to respond to a complaint?
What I was saying is under the LMA law, if you're trying to show a violation, you can go anywhere on the property. The property, in my mind, has always been something like 5 acres. When you get above 5 acres, it's only the 5 acres around the house. That comes in occasionally as a question. Most of the time you're in a town or city and you're dealing with a half acre or this sort of thing, but in my mind, you don't have a 600-acre farm and say that's all residents.
Okay. Is the mic anchored 2 decibel adjustment, that's been mentioned a couple times, is the mic anchored 2 decibel adjustment fair? Would it cause harm to citizens here since that 2 decibel adjustment was included in his analysis?
Well, Mike's analysis, as I said, it doesn't change the computer prediction. And all of the contour research, you find this kind of variation in the research. And if you try to take out something that's there to begin with, you screw up the answers. And, when they do attitudinal surveys to find percents of people, you do it with computer predictions for the most part. And so your answers line up with the computer predictions. And then you use measurements for validating the precision, that the predictions are reasonable. And I think Mike's done that. He's got a computer prediction which should be used. And the 2 dB extra that he finds gives us confidence that his prediction will work. But to say, here I've got a 2 dB change, so I'm going to change the annoyance pattern, that's not justified. I don't think that's sort of complicated, but that's the way it's done and been done for 50 years.
Okay, I think this is a yes or no question. When Mike Hankard applied a 2 decibel adjustment in this case, was that proper or improper?
I think it's improper, but I don't know if I'd use the word improper. I was looking for another word.
I have some words. Would you categorize Hanford's 2 decibel adjustment in his noise analysis, would you categorize that as misleading?
No, I just,
You're getting
I'd say
testimony
it's
now, so
inaccurate.
ask a question.
Inaccurate. Is that what you want to call it, is inaccurate?
Inaccurate would be.
Let's go with that.
Okay. What, I don't expect you to know this answer, but I'm gonna try. What percent of Invenergy's McLean County project, what percent of the residents in this project that was proposed do you think might have excessive noise?
I have no idea.
Okay. When Mike Hankard presented the California Ridge noise study to the Vermilion County Board, when he was presenting it, he said he disagreed.
We haven't talked about that at all.
We
You
talked
never
about
testified to
the
that.
California Ridge project.
Oh, California, you said something about it somewhere else just a minute ago.
The Cal Ridge project was in Vermilion County.
Vermilion County, okay.
When he presented the California Ridge study to that county board, Michael Hankard said that you and Mike disagreed on some items. Can you remember what those disagreements were specific to the noise study near the Harkey and the Miles family home at the California Ridge project?
I can't remember us ending up disagreeing.
Okay.
So I guess the answer is no.
Is it a mistake to allow Invenergy's wind turbines to be placed 1,500 feet from the nearest residence here in McLean County?
I think so.
Do you anticipate there will be problems occurring here in McLean County due to noise from turbines?
Problems come at different levels. And to use just the word problems is a problem.
Do you anticipate some levels of noise complaints will occur on Invenergy's McLean County wind turbine layout due to the noise?
I anticipate that there'll be some level of annoyance. There'll be higher annoyance, there'll be smaller numbers, less annoyance, higher numbers, but there'll be some annoyance.
That's all.
Because
I didn't mean to cut you off. You were finishing. I'm sorry I cut you off.
beyond that there'll be levels of annoyance, I couldn't predict what else would happen.
I have no further questions. Thank you very much.
I guess one clarification and then a question for the board. What I didn't see is there redirecting or not? There is, okay. However, I'm not really trying to redirect. I think Mr. Harkey asked a question that was kind of a combination of two different things, and I want to make sure it's very clear on Dr. Schomer's behalf. Dr. Schomer, and he can confirm this, Dr. Schomer did not testify in Livingston County against the Invenergy project. In fact, he refused because he represented Invenergy in Livingston County. The project that Dr. Schomer or Mr. Hankard or Mr. Harkey was talking about was actually a text amendment hearing that was after the Invenergy hearing. So he did not ever testify against Invenergy in that hearing. There was a later text amendment done in Livingston County that changed the setbacks to 3250. That's what Dr. Schomer testified in. I just want to make that very clear so that Dr. Schomer who did work for Invenergy at the time, does not have some problem with a conflict because he did not testify against Invenergy. So I think Invenergy understands that, but I just want to make that clear for the record, so in the future we don't have a problem. That's all. Thank you. And as far as redirecting, I'm sorry, is there anybody else? I didn't mean that. I apologize.
Yeah, we're still in the question mode. Any more questions from the audience? You come forward. I don't see anybody out there, so.
Okay. Dr. Schomer, a report like what Mr. Hanker did, do you have any idea how long that would take to prepare?
To prepare again what?
You've seen Mr. Hanker's report and this analysis in McLean County on this project, correct?
Right.
Do you have a handle on how long something like that takes to prepare?
I really don't. He works pretty fast.
Okay.
Other groups I don't think work quite as fast. I just don't remember.
How long would something like that take you to prepare, I guess is the question.
Forever.
On that note, I have nothing.
Mr. Lugnans, do you have any other witnesses after Dr. Schomer?
We have other items to bring up, but I think I can't think of the right word now. And to be appropriate, I think we would probably ask that Mr. Hanker be cross-examined at this point, just so that I know he does not have to come, so we're not leaving him stay overnight more than he has to, if at all possible. So I think that would be what I would ask at this time, since they brought Mr. Hanker in for that purpose.
That's fine with us, but I think Mr. Schomer, I think you can turn your mic off, you're out of the hot seat. We really appreciate you coming. I'm sure it's an inconvenience, so.
Thank you.
Take a break before this, or have that required?
I think I'm supposed to call Mr. Hanker forward.
Gentlemen, I wanted to let you know before we started, if you turn on more than 3 mics anywhere around this table, the next mic, it'll turn green, it won't record. So as best as you can, if we're asking questions or if you're not talking, you can turn it off. That way we can preserve the record if we should need it. We do post our audio online for all to listen to, so if you can, try and be cognizant of that.
Just for the record, you were sworn in at the start of the meeting when you testified, so we're still going to figure that you're sworn in.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. We do need your name and address over the record.
Sure, it's Michael Hankard, Hankard, 211 East Verona, Verona Avenue, Verona, Wisconsin, 53593.
And we do appreciate you coming down.
And I remember the word, I was trying to be considerate. How's that? Thanks a lot. It's not something I do very well. I do have a question, and maybe it's for the chairman and Samantha or Ms. Wally. Do I have to introduce exhibits and evidence, or just in fact they're referred to and handed out on those? I mean, do I need to say at this point, we would ask that, exhibits 7, SLG exhibits 3 through 7 be admitted into evidence? I guess that's the question.
It's sort of up to you. You can do it, I believe when the applicant did it, they used all the exhibits and then they admitted them at the end. You can put them at the beginning. If you want them to be considered, make sure they're identified on the record and admitted if that's your intention. But however you see fit to do so, it's up to you.
Okay, at this time we would ask that SLG exhibits 3 through 7, so I don't forget, are introduced into evidence, please.
Do you have the handout?
They're here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what we did with Dr.
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about additional exhibits. Okay.
We'll consider those entered.
Thank you, sorry. And that probably wasn't very clear.
Excuse me a second. We never got 4, so if you entered 3 through 7,
4 was Dr. Schomer's CD.
Oh, his seat.
Let's see, okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna update that, or hopefully if I remember when I get to the office in the morning, I'll update it for you, but that's what it was.
okay.
I think you pretty much have a handle on his qualifications, so I'm not real worried about it this one, but,
Except for Nick.
Mr. Hanker, are these turbines larger than the others that are already in McLean County, do you know?
I do not know specifically what other turbines are in McLean County.
Okay, you utilized ISO 9613 for your analysis, correct?
Correct.
And that ISO 9613 is regularly used by experts in your field to make predictions of this type, correct?
It is.
And IPCB regs are not based on averages over separate hours, are they?
The Illinois pollution control regs are based on 1 hour.
Okay, but not on averages of different hours, correct? When you can't exceed, if I exceed, let's use 1,000 hertz for example. If I exceed 1,000 hertz for 1 hour at 43, and the next hour I'm at 37, the IPCB regs don't allow you to average those and say that that site is at 40 for those 2 hours, does it?
That's right, it does not.
Okay, just trying to make it clear. I think we're all in agreement that your study took, as far as the 1,000 hertz level, I'm really pretty much going to talk about that, so if I don't say it, that's what we're talking about. If you don't understand me, please tell me. But I know you're pretty good at that, so.
Okay, I will.
You took 2 decibels off the modeling on this project at the 1,000 hertz band based on a 4-month study you did, correct?
It's based on that study and others that I've conducted subsequently.
Okay, the 4-month study that you referred to in your PowerPoint, or that you referred to is the California Ridge study, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed that study was not put into the evidence in your original direct, was it?
I am not sure.
Fair enough. Did you perform the tests in California Ridge in strict compliance with IPCB regs?
Yes, we did.
You set up 5 different noise emission monitors for that Cal Ridge study, is that correct?
There were the 2 primary ones, and there were some others. If it's in the report as 5, I would agree with you.
I think I have some testimony in the past that you said 5, but it's 4 or 5. Is that a fair statement? It's somewhere in that range.
Sure, yes it is.
It doesn't matter if it's 4 or 6 or.
Yeah.
It was multiple. How's that?
Yes.
Okay. However, neither you nor anyone else was constantly visually watching all the monitors involved, were you?
That's right. They were unattended for the most part.
Showing you what has been marked, SLG Exhibit 13. This is an IPCD decision titled Charter Hall Homeowners Association versus Overland Transportation System. I won't add the site. Bring your attention to page 14 of this decision. Everybody got it? I'm sorry.
I don't find the pages numbered. Can you-
They're really light in the bottom right there. I'm sorry.
Yes.
They're very light. My copier's things, sorry.
I think I have it, yes.
Okay. Second full paragraph. It's in the last three sentences. It starts with Part 951 requires. You see that?
Yes.
You see that Part 9, where it says, quote, Part 951 requires, among other things, that the person taking sound measurements be present while measurements are being taken to look and listen for extraneous sound sources and varying wind conditions that may affect the data. Is that correct? Is that what that says?
It does.
And then it cites 951.105C7.
Yes.
Now, 951.105 has been, and it's been repealed, but just put somewhere else in the IPCD regs, correct?
I don't know specifically.
Okay. We're going to need this a few times, so I might as well just change it out anyway. Okay, showing you what is marked as SLG Exhibit 19. These are the IPC, at least a significant portion of the IPCD regulations, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now this, pages are not numbered because I put a few of them together and trying to make this easy, but now we're realizing I'm making it hard to find the pages, but we'll try and muddle through if that's okay. The next to last page. Paragraph 7, do you see that towards the top?
Yes.
It talks about, and this is part of section 910.105. You can trust me, I'm not going to lie about that.
Okay. I trust you.
And if I do, Jim will catch me, so I won't be in trouble. It says, while measurements, again, this likewise says, while measurements are being taken, visual and oral surveillance, and oral as in AURAL, surveillance of extraneous sound sources and varying wind conditions must be made to ensure that conditions of measurement are accurately known. That says that correct?
And that's paragraph 7?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. In the Charter Hall Homeowners Association versus Overland Transportation System in 3, it says in there that Mr. Harmon, right after the part we looked at on page 14, says, Mr. Harmon left the site while the measurements were being taken. Accordingly, he did not comply with this provision of Part 951. Is that correct?
It does say that, yes.
Okay, so like Mr. Harmon in the Charter Hall case, you were not present when all the measurements were being taken, were you?
That's correct.
The maximum hourly average for nighttime is 41 decibels at the 1,000 hertz octave band, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
For the land use of
For Class A?
C2A, yes.
For A?
Being receiving land, yes.
Yes, sorry. And I think we'll, just to make it easier, and tell me if this does not make it easier, we're going to assume everything is Class C is the emitting land, if that's the right language.
It is.
Okay, and then when I'm talking about Class A, B, or C, if this Class A, I don't think there is a B or C, I'm going to be talking about receiving land, okay?
Sure.
If that gets, if you have a question, feel free to clean it up for me. If you did not take 2 decibels off the 1,000 hertz band because of the California Ridge study, there would be 7 receptors over 41.0 dBs at the 1,000 hertz bandwidth, correct?
I believe it is correct, yes.
Okay. And then we would have approximately, or at least another 11 between 40.5 and 41.
That I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm not trying to make it a memory test. If you want to go to page 43, you have your report, I assume, Mr. Hankford?
I do.
If you want to go to page 43.
Are you talking about the report and the
No, I
application?
apologize. That I gave you the wrong number, the wrong page number.
That's good, because it doesn't go to page 40.
I just realized that myself, how I realized I gave you the wrong one. You have in your report a chart, and I think it's page 13 of your report, table 3.
Yes.
Okay. This is the ones that released the highest predicted noise levels at non-participating residents, correct?
Right.
Okay. And I'm only talking about not participating when I say 7 or 11. The participating, you know, whatever decisions they made. I just kind of counted through here and found 11 on this one page, that if I added 2 decibels, they would be between 40.5 and 41.0. If you want to count them, you know, add 1,000. If you want to count, feel free. But that's what I did.
Well, I see in this table that it would be, if you added 2 decibels to 1,000 hertz, the top 6 would exceed 41, but that's it.
Yeah, but, okay, we can talk about that. Let's go, I'll go back to that, or let's start there for a second. Did you hear, did anybody tell you about Mr. Slago's testimony?
I heard some of it, yes.
Okay, and he pointed out there was a missing receptor?
Yes.
Okay, do you disagree with that?
I do not. We chased that down first thing this morning, and
That's how I got to 7.
okay, fair enough. And it is.
Okay, now let's talk about the 11.
Okay.
And those aren't exactly in order, but I just kind of counted through and found, in this case, 11 between 38.5 and 39, which would get us to the 11, between, at least 11 between that level.
Between the 40.5 and...
The 41 if you added 2 decibels back.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. You lowered the 1,000 hertz bandwidth 2 decibels based significantly on the language in paragraph 7 of, do you have do you have California Red handy?
I do.
Okay. If you go to page 44 of that report, that's where the 43 and 44 is.
I have it.
It was that conclusion, was that a significant part of you lowering the 1,000 hertz band levels 2 decibels in this McLean County report?
Well, it's not, I mean, that statement is what that statement is. And for example, we see here that it says that the 500 hertz was also 2 dB down, but we did not subtract 2 dB at 500 hertz as well. So no, this statement is, it is what it is. But the way I came about the 2 dB reduction is to look at the loudest noise levels that we measured that we considered turbine only. So as you know, when you go out with a microphone, you're going to measure turbines and traffic and wind. So we have to try to separate the two. So we have some of the data that we can tell from the frequency spectra and wind conditions, et cetera, that it was just turbines. And that's really what we want to compare our model to, because our model is a model of just turbines. So we chose the best data within the data set, or I did, I should say, within the California Ridge. Of all the measurements we took, there were a few 10-minute samples that were full turbine noise. And so we used that to compare to the model, and that's when I find the model underpredicts at 500 hertz and overpredicts at 1,000 hertz.
Could you go to figure 7-1 of your report? looking at California Ridge. Page 28.
Yes, got it, thank you.
And if this, the second graph is prime, at prime 2, 1,000 octave band, correct? Hertz octave band?
Yes,
Can you tell us which of those points were your basis for lowering it 2 decibels?
I do not know from this graph which one of those points.
Okay. There are a significant number of points at that, in that table that are between 39 and 41, and some slightly over 41, correct?
Yes,
And this is noise levels versus ground wind speed, correct?
right.
We would agree that the act, well, we already did this. Mr. Griffin represented the ZBA or the county board in the Energy's hearing for a special use back in 2014, 2015. Do you recall that?
Would that be the Pleasant Ridge project?
Yes.
I do recall the Pleasant Ridge project, yeah.
And you recall Mr. Griffin representing the board?
I remember him being there. I don't recall his exact capacity.
Okay. And you testified in Pleasant Ridge, correct?
I did.
And you did a report there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point after Mr. Griffin pointed out in questioning that numerous receptors in the original application in Livingston County were between 41 and 41.4, you remodeled Livingston County with LNTE blades for certain wind turbines to get them all at 41 and below, correct?
That was the process, yes.
Okay. Is it your opinion that if the noise emissions do not exceed the limits in section 901.102 of the IPCB regs, that's the 1,000, that's the nighttime and daytime levels, right? Is it your opinion that if noise emissions do not exceed those numeric limits, that there can be no violation of the IPCB standards?
I object to that question. I think it calls for a legal conclusion as to what a violation of the standards is.
You know what, I just asked his opinion, and he's an acoustician who deals with this on a regular basis, and he's testified in numerous counties throughout the state as to noise levels and what's appropriate and what's not under the IPCB regulations, including in this case.
Well, I can read you the text, which says that no one shall cause noise levels to exceed those numbers.
Is that the only portion of the text that says that? That says that's the only time you can have a violation?
This is a fairly robust code with other aspects to it, so there may be other elements of exceeding or not exceeding.
You're familiar with the Knox versus Torres case, right?
I am.
In fact, Mr. Griffin just said, you heard Mr. Griffin ask Dr. Schomer about that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. On page 12 of that decision, third full paragraph. I guess it's the second one under the discussion. Just to point you in the right direction. It says the board has previously found that compliance with numerical noise standards does not present an absolute bar to finding a violation of the general nuisance prohibitions, correct?
It does say that.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I quoted wrong. General nuisance noise prohibitions, I missed the word. No one said I could read. The next paragraph goes on to say that the board has determined that noise interfering with sleep and use of yard, and then they cite the Hoffman decision, and trucking operation noise impacting sleep, watching television, and conversing, and then they cite the Thomas versus Carey Company's decision, does constitute an interference. Here the noise impacts the sleep of the complainants. Do you see that?
Yes.
So the PCB in essence stated that noise can interfere with, it did interfere with the enjoyment of life in that case, correct?
I'm going to object to the question to the extent it asks for more than Mr. Henker to just acknowledge what is written there.
I'll just read it then. The board finds, does it say in the next paragraph, the board finds that the noise emissions from the school do interfere with the complainant's enjoyment of life. See that?
I do see that.
Okay. And if you go back to SLG Exhibit 19, which is the IPCB regulations, and if you could go to section 900.102. I think that's about 8 pages in, for everybody who's looking.
Yes, I see it.
Okay, in fact, section 900.102 states that, quote, no person shall cause or allow the emission of sound beyond the boundaries of his property as defined in section 25 of the Act, so as to cause noise pollution in Illinois. Is that correct?
That's what it says.
Okay. And it talks about the boundaries of the property, correct?
It says that no person shall cause or allow the emission of sound beyond the boundaries of his property.
Okay. Doesn't mention a structure anywhere in there, does it?
No.
Now, if we go back to page 4 of that same document, this is in section 900.101. That defines noise pollution as, quote, the emission of sound that unreasonably interferes with the enjoyment of life or with any lawful business or activity, doesn't it?
It does say that.
Okay. And section 900, or 910.104, if you could go to that. I think that's towards the back. It's about 5 or 6 pages from the back.
900.104 or 900?
910.104.
910.
That's why it's towards the back.
Okay.
It specifically says in there, doesn't it, that sound pressure level measurements are not required to establish a violation of 35 Illinois Admin Code 900.102 nuisance noise. Is that correct?
It does say that.
Okay. I believe you testified, or at least it's in your report, that you measured at the edge of the residential structures, correct?
Well,
you modeled. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we modeled at the residential structures, yes.
I say that way too often, so please clean me up on that. I'm not trying to.
Right.
Okay. You never measured in any, or never modeled at any of the property lines, correct?
We did not.
Okay. You would agree with me, would you not, that the classification of land under the IPCB regs is based on the actual use of the property, not the underlying zoning, correct?
That is my understanding.
Okay. Go back to SLG Exhibit 19, if you would. About midway through, there's an Appendix B. It's a chart. It's probably, I don't know, for those looking, it's a 9-page chart. It's kind of right in your notes. And you recognize this chart, right?
I do.
In fact, I think another one that Mr. Griffin, I think, referred to earlier. This is Appendix B to the IPCB standards, correct?
Yes.
And it says, quote, land-based classification standards, correct?
Yes.
Does not say building-based standards, does it?
It says land-based classification standards.
Doesn't say structure-based standards, does it?
No.
Okay. Showing you what's been marked as SLG Exhibit 11. These are, it's an opinion of the IPCB board from 1973. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. Could you go to page 18 And it's under Rule 201. Again, the numbers are light in the bottom right corner.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. The exhibit, or at least this section, starts off classification of land according to use. You see that?
Yes.
Okay, again, it doesn't say classification of structure, it says classification of land, correct?
Yes.
And then the second paragraph goes on to say, classification of land is dependent on the actual use being made of the land, correct?
Yes.
So we're talking about the actual use being made of the land. Start with that. So, are you familiar with these regulations as a professional acoustician?
I am familiar with the Illinois Pollution Control Board regs for noise, yes.
Okay. And these are regs that have been enacted by the IPCB to assist in explaining the method of calculating noise emissions under 35 Illinois Admin Code 901.102, correct?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah. These regulations have been enacted, or this opinion that came out, an attempt by the Illinois Pollution Control Board to assist in explaining the method of calculating noise emissions under 901.102, correct?
Well, if you're...
Mr. Lukens, are you quoting something there, or are you
I'm just asking a question right now.
I'm going to object. I mean, he's asking what the purpose of the document is. It's a legal conclusion.
If he knows, I just ask him to answer. If he doesn't, he doesn't.
I do not know what the purpose of this document is specifically.
Okay. 901.102 is at least part of the noise emission standards we've been discussing, correct?
Right.
In fact, that's where we find the nighttime limits for sound emitted to Class A land, correct?
What section you're...
901.102. It's
Yes.
the one with the chart.
Right.
And those limits for Class A land are 41 decibels, as we've said, at 1,000 hertz, and 47 at 500 hertz for nighttime, correct?
47 at 500 hertz and 41 at 1,000 hertz.
Okay. Again, on page 18 of the exhibit, second paragraph under Rule 201, and again it says that the quote classification of land is dependent on the actual use being made of the land rather than on anticipated or planned uses such as could occur if the classifications were based on zoning. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And in fact, if we go to section 901.101 of Exhibit 19, Class A, under B, Class A land, they talk about land uses again, correct?
Right.
Now, if you could go back to Exhibit 11, still in Rule 201.
Which is 11?
It's the opinion that we've talked about.
Okay, yes.
Page 8, back to page 18, or actually page 19 this time, top of page 19.
I think the witness has specified he's not familiar with exhibit number 11, so I object to any further questions on that.
I'm just going to ask you if I'm reading it correctly. The top of page 19 says, quote, "It is important to recognize that the land use is not necessarily coextensive with land ownership. A good example of this is a farmer's piece of property. A portion of land used as farmland would be classified as C." You would agree with that, right?
That's what it says here, yes.
I mean, would you also agree that that's the classification for farmland?
Farmland is classified as C, yes, if you go to the table.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it goes on to say, well, the farmstead itself would be classified as in, quote, A use, correct?
That's what it says. Yes.
And it says farmstead, not farmhouse, correct?
It says farmstead.
Doesn't say farmhouse anywhere there.
It does not,
Okay.
that I see here.
Okay, let's go back to section 9, or to exhibit 19, the regs. I apologize for keep going back and forth, but it's the only way I know how to do it. Section 901.102 of the IPCD regs. That's the one where we have the nighttime and daytime levels, correct?
Yes.
And let's just go down to B, which is the nighttime, which is what I think we all think is really the issue here, and that, I mean, daytime, you're not even close to the standards, correct? Those numbers at 1,000 hertz?
Right, the daytime numbers are roughly 5 dB higher. Yeah.
So what we're talking about is nighttime, and subsection B is nighttime, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And stay on that page, because I saw you going back and forth, but that's the page we're going to talk about. Subsection B says, no person shall cause or allow the emission of sound during nighttime hours from the property line noise source located on any Class A, B, or C land to any receiving Class A land which exceeds any allowable octave band sound pressure level specified in the following table and measured at any point within such receiving Class A land, correct?
It does say that?
It says at any point within such receiving land, correct?
Yes.
However, your models are not based on points, do not show the noise levels at every point within the receiving land, do they?
We predicted noise levels at the residence.
And at the residence only, correct?
That's correct.
Even if an entire property is 1 acre to 5 acres and is used entirely for residential, you only measured at the structure, not at any points within the land, correct?
Yes, we only predicted at the residence.
It's correct that if you model 50 feet closer to the wind turbine or turbines, you could have up to a 0.3 decibel change, correct?
Well, it depends on the distance to the turbine to begin with. It's a ratio, but it's tenths of a dB for a change of 50 feet, let's say.
So it could be up to 0.3 decibels, correct?
I don't know. It depends on how far the turbines are to begin with.
Do you remember testifying in Livingston County where you testified and I cross-examined you, and one of those days was taken from mine for a few months, April 29th, 2015?
But I don't remember the specific dates.
Neither would have I.
I can claim to be like Paul in that regard.
We're kind of getting to the point where we need to kind of see where we're going with this. We're just kind of lost up here.
We're almost done. We're almost done.
Let's kind of moving along.
We are, sir. Okay, so if you could look, or let me ask, do you recall being asked this question and be giving this answer on that day? Okay, so at the center of the house, if we move 50 feet out, we could have 0.3 decibel change, correct? You said that? Answer at most. Yes? Do you remember being asked that question and giving that answer?
I see it on the paper and I have no reason to doubt that it occurred, but I don't specifically remember being asked the question.
Okay. And then the next question is, you recall being asked this question and giving this answer. Okay, how about 500 feet? And your answer was, it's going to depend on the distance to the nearest turbine, distance to other turbines. Question, okay, but we could have more than 0.3 decibels there, correct? Answer, yes. Do you recall being asked that question and giving that answer?
No, I don't recall the specific line of questioning or the situation that was being asked.
Do you recall, do you have any reason to believe that that question and answer were not correctly transcribed?
I have no reason to believe that, no.
Okay, and let's go to the next line.
Can you point me to where you are?
I'm sorry, yeah, page 3871 and 3872. And I should have done that for Mr. Griffin, I apologize to you.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay, now we're at the top of 3872.
Yeah,
You won't have
no
it.
idea, okay.
You won't have it. This is an attempt to, you're not, I mean, I can hand it all out, but yeah, I don't think you need it. Do you recall being asked this question and giving this answer? And at 200 feet, we could have more than 0.3 as well, correct? Answer, yes. Does that sound proper?
Again, I'll go with that the transcription was correct.
Okay. Your models are not based on the actual areas of mixed-use land, such as the portion of the land used for things other than farmland, correct?
Could you restate that?
Yeah, your models don't show, you didn't go look at the properties to determine which section of the property was farmland and which one was farmstead when you modeled. You just modeled to the house, no other decisions were made, correct?
Objection, I think it's been asked and answered. He testified he modeled at the residence a couple times already.
Let's move on.
Do you recall testifying previously that the Pollution Control Board has taken up this issue of property line versus structure and said, quote, so the Class A land, a residential property, would be the area around a house, not the entire extent of the platted land? Do you recall that?
That would have been my opinion, so I can assume that, again, it was properly transcribed.
Okay, and but you didn't say just the structure, you said the area around the house, correct? Does that sound correct to you?
I do not recall exactly what I said. Is that here?
That's actually a different transcript. Page 1325, this is the January 21st, 2015 testimony.
Okay.
Before Mr. Lucas goes further, I'd ask what is he impeaching here? I don't know what contrary testimony the witness has given that he's trying to impeach here.
Well, I guess I'll just ask the question. Do you believe that the area around the house is residential property, or do you believe it stops at the structure?
I believe that given that nighttime is the issue and a majority of people are sleeping a majority of the time at night, then it would be the residence itself that is of primary concern.
Okay. So, do you believe, so at that point, it doesn't matter once it's nighttime, what the modeling says or shows anywhere on the property other than at the residence? Is that your opinion?
Yeah, could you read?
Yeah, is it your opinion that the land outside the house, so if I have an acre house, an acre property of land, and at nighttime, I'm not afforded the protection on any part of the land, it's only at the house? Is that your opinion?
It is, and it's based, if you go back to, you had me look at Appendix B of the Illinois Pollution Control Board regulations, and you asked me if something said building or something said structure, and it says residence. To me, residence that's not a yard or a porch or a garage. A residence is a physical house that one lives in. So on that basis, I do believe that it is the residence itself that is the point where one should assess compliance.
But only at night?
Well, no, the daytime standard would apply similarly, but we are talking about the nighttime standard.
Well, I mean, you have 901.102 that says at any point within the land, correct? Doesn't say at the residence, doesn't say at the structure, it says at any point within the land, you cannot exceed that limit, correct?
Which
I would object. We've been through what
Well,
the regs say already, so this
Well,
is
no, I
repetitive.
mean, he made a statement, and I'm trying to show how ridiculous that statement is. 901.102 does not say residence, it says at any point within the land, correct?
This is kind of argumentary. I think that if you want to make that point, you can do it in a closing statement.
Where would I find the DBAs in your report?
there are no DBA levels in our report because there's no DBA standard that's applied.
In your report, there's no DBA levels?
Well, I'm sorry, they are there, but they're there for information only.
Yeah, I'm not saying you, but
Yeah, sorry, they are right there on in table 3.
every one of your, in Appendix C, correct?
Well, they'd be also in there, yes.
Okay, and I'm just grabbing one, but every one of these every one of these pieces of property has an over-level deviation on it, correct?
Yes.
Nothing further.
We're gonna take a 10-minute break, and you can do redirect.